Listen, I don't know if this has ever happened in any of my sunscreen review videos, but I actually like all of these sunscreens. Now, as always with these type of review videos, and all my videos actually, timestamps will be listed below so you can easily navigate the video, but watch the full thing, like shit. Nah, cause watch the full thing, cause there might be some information in here you might miss, but I put the timestamp so it's easy for you to navigate, if you want to go back and listen to previous review. Now, a majority of these sunscreens are Korean sunscreens. I think maybe one or two are Taiwanese. I'll, denote that on, on the screen, so make sure you check that out. Now, to take something a little complex and make it a little simple when it comes to these sunscreens, because these are sunscreens that aren't available in the US because they use UV filters that aren't approved in the US. Now, that's not a bad thing. The US just be on a slow bop. The US probably hasn't approved a new UV filter probably since like I was in college, and I was in college like 20 years ago, maybe even before that. You know what I'm saying? Outside of the US, the sunscreens are quite advanced, and it's quite a shame. Now, just because it's not approved in the US doesn't mean it's a bad thing. Like I said before, the US is kind of, a little bit on a slow bop when it comes to approving UV filters. However, if you're someone who feels like you can only wear mineral sunscreens, or you find that chemical sunscreens that no matter what you try, especially if they're, American sunscreens, that you feel like it irritates your skin, it burns your eyes, yada yada. Some people do find that Korean or Taiwanese or one of the many countries in Europe who make sunscreens, they usually find that they fare a little better with those, but everybody is different. So as always, when you're trying something new, you want to do a patch test, and then you slowly introduce something into your skincare routine, to mitigate some of the irritation. Now, without further ado, let's get into these because I really like them. Let's go. So first up, and these are not in any particular order, we have the Goodal Heartleaf Calming Moisture Sun Cream. So this is an SPF 50 with a PA of 4+. If you're unfamiliar with the PA system, excuse me, this is SPF 50 plus. So it's higher than an SPF 50, but in certain regions, they can't advertise something as higher than that, so they just put the SPF 50 plus. It's not something we really use here. Maybe you'll see a sunscreen here or there with the PA system, but it denotes protection from UVA. UVA are the rays that are particularly responsible for premature signs of aging, as well as they can worsen pigmentation, among other things. So the PA system is a rating of how much UVA coverage, and something with 4+ is going to denote a very high UVA coverage. So this has a very creamy texture, but it's very lightweight, so it feels like there's nothing on. It leaves a natural finish on the skin, so this is not something that's going to be mattifying, and it's not going to be something that's excessively dewy. I have oily skin. We are in late fall, although today it felt like it was like, a spring day. It was like 60 degrees, but typically it's supposed to be like, in the 40s, maybe in the 50s, and then we're going into the winter where it can get very much colder. And typically around this time of year, I switch to, formulas that are more hydrating, more moisturizing. So I think that this would be a nice pick for oily skin during this time of year and as it gets colder. I liked how it worked on days when I wore makeup, but of course I also like it on its own. Now, if you have dry skin, this is probably going to be something that you might like when the temperature is a bit warmer out. But everybody's different. The climates where we live are different. Your routine, that sort of thing. Everybody is different. So, you kind of want to test it out and see if it's something that's going to fit into your lifestyle. Now, would you try this? Have you tried this? Let me know in the comments, and this will be linked below. Now, next up, the APLB Glutathione Niacinamide Sunscreen. I paid $14.20. You're going to get 40 ml, which is about 1.35 ounces. And this is a Korean sunscreen with an SPF 50 plus with a PA of 4+. So this is creamy yet lightweight. It leaves a healthy sheen on the skin that I really loved. Having oily skin sometimes, just like, you want a little, like at this point in life, like I want a little bit of radiance, but not too much, you know what I mean? And then, as it gets colder, I can get away with things that are a little bit more dewy-like. I wouldn't say this is dewy though. I would just say it just gives like a natural sheen. So like when the light hits your face and it's just like pow, 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 you know what I mean? That experience might be a little bit different for everybody because, how the light reflects off our skin gonna be a little bit different. Anyway, let me keep talking about the sunscreen. So like the previous one, and I vaguely remember specifically trying to, when I was ordering these, I vaguely remember thinking, okay, you know, the colder months are coming up. Let me look for some sunscreens that will be better in the colder months. But I ordered this like, shoot, September, October. It took a little while for it to get here. Normally it doesn't, but because I specifically picked sunscreens that ship quicker, but you know, it was a little delay. Anyway, now I would say that if you have dry skin, you might enjoy this as well during this time of year, you know, assuming that you have the same type of climate going on that I do here in New York City. But when it gets really cold out though, if it gets really cold out where you live and you have dry skin, oh, I had it backwards. If it gets really cold out where you live and you have dry skin, might not be your first choice. You might want something that's, you know, a bit more moisturizing. And we're gonna talk later in the video about whether or not you need to put a moisturizer on first and then put on your sunscreen. We'll talk about that a little bit later on, so, you know, make sure you stick around. But would you try this? Have you tried this? Let me know in the comments. Now, let me stick this little piece in here about glutathione, because you might be thinking about some of the more controversial uses of glutathione, which, you know, some people may use in excessive amounts in skin bleaching procedures. Ain't enough of that in here that's gonna cause that. But glutathione is also an antioxidant that's helpful in, you know, fighting against the visible signs of aging and that sort of thing. Now, next up, I don't remember why I picked this little itty bitty one, maybe because it shipped faster than the bigger one. I don't know. I mean, come to think of it, it probably makes more sense for when I'm buying sunscreens like this to just buy the mini sizes, considering that like all the sunscreens that I buy to review, I ain't gonna finish them up unless, you know, I give them away, but it's only but so many people I know. Anyway, so this is the beplain Sunmuse Moisture Sunscreen. So this is the mini. It also comes in a bigger size. I paid $7.40 for this. That's a lot of money. It's 10 milliliters, which is about 0.34 ounces. SPF 50 plus with a PA 4 pluses. So this is thick and creamy. If you have drier skin, you might like this during most times of the year. If it gets really, really cold where you are, you know, like I said before, it might work out okay depending on what else is in your routine. But you know, that's something you'd be able to find out once you kind of like, you know, test things out with your routine and your environment and yada yada. Now, however though, if you have oily skin and you're in an environment like how I am, this probably is only going to be great for you in the very colder months if you have oily skin and my folks living in a tropical environment. However, I did really enjoy this sunscreen. It leaves the skin with a healthy sheen that doesn't look greasy. I love that when you're able to have like a little bit of a sheen, but it's not greasy. So would you try this? Have you tried this? Let me know in the comments, and this will be linked in the description with everything else. Okay, so next up we have the heme UV water gel sunscreen. So this is an SPF 50 with a PA 4 pluses. So this starts out creamy, but then it turns into a watery gel. And I did find that it has a bit of a balmy feel. Not as extreme as Vaseline petroleum jelly, but it does have like, it feels a little balmy, you know, for a couple of minutes after you put it on. You know, eventually it does dry down. However, you know, keep that in mind if you're putting something on top of this like makeup. So you might want to let this, you know, give it a couple of minutes before you start on with your makeup, depending on your makeup look, because if you're going for more of a dewy kind of look, then, you know, that's probably not gonna matter anyway. I mean, technically you're supposed to wait a couple of minutes after you put your sunscreen on anyway, because although sunscreens work from the second that you put them on, they do need a little time to create that protective film to really, like, you know, be on there. Now, although I have oily skin, and I would say that this is like really nice for right now, I do think that as we get into the dead of winter, that this might not be moisturizing enough for me. And then if you have dry skin, I would say that this might be something more that you would wear during the if it gets very, very warm where you are, this might be that sunscreen for you. But would you try it? Have you tried it? Let me know in the comments. Next up, the Beauty of Joseon Ginseng Moist Sun Serum. I don't know why that was so hard for me to say. This is an SPF 50 plus with a PA 4 pluses. I paid $21 for this. You're gonna get 50 ml, which is about 1.7 ounces. Now, this shocked me a little bit because I was not expecting it to be the texture that it was. So when I hear serum, I think, you know, something that's, you know, quite runny. This is very oily, although, you know, obviously serums can be oils as well too. But the funny thing about it being oily when you put it on the skin, and it's very shiny and radiant when you first put it on. And you know, it's gonna stay like that for a couple minutes, but it does dry down to where it's more of like a satin type of finish. So it's not completely oily, but you know, keep that in mind because, you know, sometimes skincare products don't play well together depending on what the base is. So for instance, you know, you might put this on with like one of your favorite moisturizers, and then you might notice that, like, you know, the moisturizer starts to pill up on your skin, you know, that sort of thing. Usually to avoid that kind of situation, usually what you want to do is either, you know, just give things a couple of minutes in between your products so that way, you know, one dries down before you put the other one on, so it's not, you know, it's not having that kind of friction. Or you try to use products that all have similar bases. So, you know, water-based products will work really well with water-based products, and then, you know, things that have silicone, you know, that sort of thing. Now, the question is though, do you need to wear a moisturizer under your sunscreen? And the answer is yes. It depends. So me personally, I didn't need a moisturizer underneath any of these sunscreens because I felt that they were moisturizing enough for, you know, the climate in which I am in here, for my lifestyle, and for what my skin needed at the time. So I did not need to put a moisturizer on underneath any of these. There are going to be instances where you might feel like, you know what? Can you use a little moisturizer underneath my sunscreen? So that's just something that you kind of have to, like, you know, make a judgment call depending on, you know, the number of factors that go into how, you know, your skin is affected. You know, your lifestyle, what you're gonna be doing for the day, the climate, what the weather's doing, you know, that sort of thing. Those are all going to factor in. And there are some sunscreens where they're like, I call them straight up sunscreens. I think they're very far and few in between straight up sunscreens nowadays. And by that I mean it's like the sole purpose of it is to protect the skin from, you know, the sun. Whereas a lot of these are like, you know, they have moisturizing ingredients in them so they can moisturize the skin as well as protect it from the sun. So the first one that actually comes, well, there's two products that come into mind when I think of like straight up sunscreens, and that's the Supergoop Unseen Sunscreen, which is a popular one, and then the Black Girl Sunscreen and the Make It Matte product, which is kind of similar-ish to the Unseen Sunscreen. I talked about both of those on the channel, so, and compared them, so, you know, check out this video right here if you're interested. Since those are really like a gel, there may be ingredients in it that might be able to moisturize the skin, but me, myself, personally, I'll put a moisturizer on first, let that dry down, and then put, you know, a product like that on top. So it's a judgment call. It's gonna be a, you know, maybe one day you wear it, like, for instance, this week, just this week, it was super cold on Monday, and then today it was 60 degrees. So Monday I had on, you know, my coat, had to zip the coat up, you know, turn up the collar on my favorite winter coat, you know what I'm saying? And then today it was like 60 degrees, so I had on a moto jacket. So today, what I did with my skin is gonna be different from what I did with my skin when it was cold. Other things that factor into, you know, should I wear a moisturizer underneath? Which sunscreen should I use? You know, are you wearing makeup? What is your makeup look? What goal are you trying to achieve with your makeup look? See, me, I'm not into, you know, my skin looking super matte anymore. I'd rather more of like a satin kind of natural, verging on the dewy side, but not completely dewy, because, you know, I'm oily, you know, that dewy turn into grease real quick. So for me, I would rather something that's a little bit more moisturizing as my base, because, you know, I want my makeup to radiate throughout the day. Now, if you happen to be thinking, what does Danielle think of other Korean or Japanese or Taiwanese sunscreens? You need to check out this playlist. You know, click on that, you know, go ahead and watch it. However, if you're somebody who wears mineral sunscreens and you want to watch a video where, you know, there's actually some really, really nice ones in there, check out this video. Whichever way you choose, I'll see you there.